It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Good to have you with us on this Monday edition of the show. We got a lot to get to over the next 60 minutes. A whole weekend to recap. Major League Baseball and the Yankees smashing. There was a NASCAR race in Martinsville. Denny Hamlin, your winner there. We'll recap that with our man Tino Pattigno. Scott Seidenberg drops by to drop some knowledge on us from the world of sports betting and more. Odds and ends, all that fun stuff. But we start things out in the NCAA and, of course, the men's basketball tournament and the women's basketball tournament, both still going on. And Sam Yarnell is here on this fine Monday. Hopefully for wherever you are across America and much of Canada where we are available as well. Sam Yarnell, our Final Four is set, and it's chalk. I mean, look, I know you're probably not surprised. I figured somebody would score an upset somewhere in there, but it didn't happen, and we have four number ones for, I don't know, the first time since, 2006? I don't know, Matt Norlander.
2008.
2008, there it is, 2008. We've got all number one. Interestingly enough, that was in San Antonio for that Final Four, and this San Antonio. This Final Four is in San Antonio, which is pretty wild, too.
Yeah, the difference, Jason Page, is if you go back, and this will make my all-around point, but you know what? I'm going to lead with it anyway. If you go back to the 2008 Final Four and look at those one seeds that made that Final Four, you're talking about teams like Memphis. You're talking about teams like UCLA out of the Pac-12 at that point, right? So we're talking about a dispersion of conference stardom. You're talking about Memphis, who ultimately went on to lose the national championship to Kansas by 7 points. They were a team that came from a mid-major conference, right? So when we look at the one seeds that made the Final Four this year, ACC, SEC, right? It's all big conference teams. This is the problem with college sports, but namely college basketball. Because in football, it's come to be expected because, quite frankly, they've been breaking the rules for years. And when the rules that they were breaking just became legal, they were like, all right, we'll just do it on the books now. In basketball, it's never been that way, and teams have always had a shot late in the season. You're not seeing that anymore in college basketball, even all the way down to Houston, right now coming out of the Big 12 of Power 5 Conference. These are all teams that are 7 deep, more talented than the top 3 of any of the opponents that they've faced, and that's just a simple fact. I know Alabama was good. I sang their praises all season long and into March Madness, but the fact of the matter is, when you match them up against Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg, and Duke, they just don't have the star power. They don't have the money. They don't have the prestige or the talent. And that, Jason Page, is what is wrong with college basketball and why this tournament specifically is leading to the rapid downfall of the sport.
I had a really interesting text exchange with our friend Patrick McEnroe on Sunday about this very topic. I want to get to it here coming up in just a moment after a word from our friends over at Edge Boost. Hopefully you're making money on this NCAA men's basketball tournament. If you went chalk, you certainly are making some money on this NCAA men's basketball tournament. I am all about trying to give you some ways to do better with your money when it comes to sports betting. That's why we give you picks on here. We have some fun with it. Experts, all of that good stuff. That's why I want to tell you about our friends over at Edge Boost. It's the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. Edge Boost is an online bank account paying you for every deposit. And with the Edge Boost Visa debit card, you're getting up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. Free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're doing already. It's a no-brainer. Plus, your Edge Boost debit card starts with a $250,000 daily limit, and it'll never be declined for gambling activity. What's better than that? How many times have you gone to use your card? Not happening. Not happening with the Edge Boost debit card. Well, they've also got Built-in tools to help you stay responsible. Absolutely no hidden fees or minimum required balances. Stop leaving money on the table. Visit edgeboost.bet to learn more. That's edgeboost.bet, or just scan the QR code below. And when you do, use my promo code WRAP, WRAP, for a free account upgrade with our friends over at Edge Boost. All right, who gives Duke its biggest challenge then?
Oof. I mean, I don't think that the road is as easy for Duke as it seems like a lot of people in the media are making it out to be, especially with the strength of this Final Four. Houston plays teams close, and I really think that Houston may be the best defense that Duke has seen all season, certainly all tournament. So I do think that it'll be interesting to see how Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel, especially with their youth, right, are able to deal with what is maybe the best defense in the country. On the Auburn-Florida side, I think either of those teams would pose a threat to Duke. I don't think either of them are as formidable of an opponent for Duke as Houston is. I really think if Duke gets past Houston, they're going to be very tired, and I don't think that they'll win the national championship. But if they get past Houston, that'll be the hardest team for them to get by.
I think if Florida, I will say this, as much as I have sung the praises of Duke, and I think they should come out of this Final Four with a national championship. As much as I've said that, though, having watched now this tournament and Florida in particular, if Florida plays its best, if Florida plays its A-plus game, and Duke slips even just a little bit, Florida can win that game. Florida can win that game. I'm convinced. And look, I think the pressure is on Duke here, because they only get one shot at this with Cooper Flagg. He's on his way out. We already know where he's going. So I think if the pressure is anywhere in this tournament, it's on Duke. And if they get to a game with Florida where, Florida does play that, I saw two Floridas. I saw Florida against UConn in the first half that looked, frankly, for 30 minutes of that game that just looked dismal, and then turned it on. When that team turns it on and plays its best, I think Florida could hang with them. That's
and they're also a team that outside of that UConn game has kind of had it on the entire tournament. Well, I guess the first 35 minutes against Texas Tech, we can say. But think about what they did in the second half of that game. Very similar, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go by they were great, bad in the first half, they were great, bad in the first half, they're due to be great in the Final Four matchup against Auburn, right? So maybe I'll just take the over and hope for a fun game.
I think the over might be a safe bet in that game, too, by the way. We'll see what Scott Seidenberg thinks coming up in a couple of minutes. Get his thoughts on the Final Four. I was listening to him over on VSiN over the weekend while I was driving around Las Vegas, just watching him be gutted by the Florida game as he was listening to that. So we'll talk to him about that. That's coming up in a couple of minutes. More Sam later on. Don't go anywhere. The one and only Sports Wrap continues, and good to have you with us on this Monday. Talked about the NCAA Tournament in the first segment of the show. Let's talk about it a little bit more from the handicapping standpoint. Look at that handsome man. Scott Seidenberg is here, ladies and gentlemen. The Scott Seidenberg is here. Catch him on weekends, on VSiN. What time is it? At 1 to 5 p.m.? 7 to 11. I can't do the time difference, East Coast, because I was listening to you from 4 to 8 on the West Coast.
Yes. So that would be 7 p.m. Eastern time.
There you go. 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturdays and Sundays over on VSiN. And I got to say, and we're going to talk about this more in the next segment, I was listening to you, so I was, all right, true story. I was getting my eyebrows threaded. And while I was waiting,
I prefer getting them waxed.
Oh my God, wax it! Don't get them threaded. It felt like the woman was peeling the flesh off of my face. But I got to tell you, I was hanging out in the parking lot because my husband was getting his eyebrows done. So I was hanging out in the parking lot, sitting in the car, listening to you, and I had like a good half hour to listen, and that's a good sample size. And I'm not just saying this because you were the person that replaced me at NBC Sports Radio when I was in overnights. I'm not just saying this because I've known you for, over a decade, almost a dozen years.
My goodness.
Yeah, I know. It's been that long. I'm not saying it just for that. I was so blown away with what you were doing in real time with live betting in that show that I was like, I got to talk to him about this and get him on, because I was blown away by it. And I'm not like a normal consumer or listener of VEASAN, and it just, whatever. For a myriad of reasons, I don't listen to a lot of sports radio today. But it was you, so I gave it a shot, and it was fantastic. I would definitely listen again. All right, we've got 4 number 1 seeds. How the hell do you handicap this thing, Scott?
Is anybody surprised? I understand the historic nature of this, Jason. It's only the second time since the tournament field expanded in 1985 that we have 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. It happened in 2008, and it happened this year. But in this era of college basketball, the NIL era of college basketball, it's the haves and the have-nots. And the power programs are the ones that are able to recruit the best players. The mid-major Cinderellas are done. We used to have a time in the NCAA tournament that the double-digit Cinderella teams, they could advance deep in the tournament, because what were the characteristics of those teams, right? Senior-laden teams, experienced groups that played together for years. Now, you have a talented player on one of these mid-majors for one season, they're gone. And they're going to a bigger school. They're transferring. The transfer portal's open earlier and earlier. They're taking the money and they're going to these bigger programs. So what did we see this year? Historic numbers for the favorites. 51 straight up wins by favorites in this tournament, ties the most ever in an NCAA tournament since the field expanded in 85. And guess what? We still have 3 games left to see if a favorite is going to win straight up. There's been no upsets. It's the top tier teams separating themselves from the rest of the pack. And as historic as it is that we have all 4 1 seeds, I don't really think anybody's surprised.
You can also catch Scott on pregame.com, straight out of Vegas, AM edition. Check out that podcast as well, because he doesn't have enough to keep himself busy. If there is somebody you could see, I think Florida could beat Duke. I think if they play their A-plus game and Duke comes down just a touch, I think Florida can beat them. Is that pretty much it, though, when you look at the 4 teams remaining as to who could beat Duke?
Well, I have Houston as my national champion. I had him when I filled out my bracket. I had him when I placed my futures bet before the tournament, and I'm sticking with it. And the best piece of advice I can give when it comes to betting that Houston game against Duke is wait, because Duke is the most public teams, and so they're going to be catching more money as it goes throughout the week, and this line will probably increase. So don't take the plus 4.5 now on Houston. Wait, because you're probably going to be able to get a plus 5. Who knows? Maybe even a plus 5.5. Although it could be one of those like situations that we see a lot in the Super Bowl, where because of the magnitude of the amount of money that's bet on this, you could see where the public comes in, everyone's betting Duke, the line moves to plus 5, and then right away the sharps come in and then push it right back down to 4.5, and then it goes back up to 5 and then back down to 4.5. But the reason why I think Houston has a chance here is because this is the best defense in the country by far. Well, I don't want to say by far. St. John's is up there as well, but this defense is absolutely the best defense by far that Duke has ever seen. And I know Duke is like a unicorn because they can play a multitude of styles. They can slow it down. They can speed it up. They can beat you inside. They can beat you shooting threes. And Cooper Flagg is the best player in the country. I still believe that when it comes to the crunch time moments, now Duke has not been pushed in this NCAA tournament, but a defense like Houston can keep the game close. And when it comes to crunch time, coaching matters to me. And Kelvin Sampson's the best out of the 4 coaches that we have left in this tournament. No disrespect to John Shire and the job that he's done at Duke. But Duke is led by 2 incredible freshmen and a young head coach. Kelvin Sampson's got a senior leader in LJ Cryer. He's got a couple of other upperclassmen on this team. They've been a 1 seed now for 3 straight years in the NCAA tournament. And maybe because they've burned people in the past, and I know the Jamal Shed injury kind of hurt them, the other year, but they've burned people in the past when filling out their brackets. But this is still the 3rd straight year they're a 1 seed. And it feels like of all the 1 seeds, no one's talking about Houston. So give me Houston to pull the upset off of Duke, and I like Houston to win the national championship.
I only got a minute remaining in this segment. We're going to bring you back in a couple segments, but I want to ask you about Florida because I was listening to you while that whole Florida game was going on the other night against Texas Tech, and you had Florida dead and buried when I was sitting there listening to you. I got out. I went inside to go get my eyebrows done. I came back out, and all of a sudden you're talking about Florida winning the game.
Well, that's what happens when you go on a 16-2 run in the final 2 minutes of the game. Florida could not make a three-pointer to save their lives. I believe it was like 3 of 17 for the game. And then all of a sudden, they hit 4 consecutive three-pointers in the final 2 minutes of the game. Meanwhile, Texas Tech, I don't know how you choke away that lead.
Oh.
You're up by double digits. There's no excuse to lose that game. And what happens is it's an inexperienced team that they play the clock game, and I hate that. Honestly,
Yeah.
It's like when football teams try to run out the clock, it's a different game.
Yeah.
You can't just milk the shot clock down to 6 seconds and take a bad shot to try and limit possessions. It doesn't work.
No, certainly doesn't. Wild finish to that game. Didn't go well for you, from what I recall either, and I feel bad. I could hear. It's funny listening to a grown man die on the radio, but that's kind of what happened on Saturday with Scott.
Like in The Simpsons, you
Yeah.
can pause and see exactly the moment that his heart broke. Oh!
We're coming back. Welcome back to the show. A little more Scott Seidenberg coming up in about 10 minutes. I'll talk to him about live betting, because he is big into that with his weekend show. So the Yankees put up, I think, like 4 runs and barely hit anything on opening day of the Major League Baseball season on Thursday. They then proceeded to put up a 20 spot and 13 on Sunday. And now everybody's talking about bats. Sam Yarnell. Everybody wants to talk about bats. Everybody wants to talk about torpedo bats. And it's just kind of hilarious to me. I went to go cash a ticket at the sports book here in Vegas, Durango Stations Casino. And the guy said, "Oh, Yankees, huh?" I was like, "Yep." He goes, "You better cash those tickets while you can until they ban those bats." They're not banning anything. They're legal, Sam Yarnell. They're legal bats. And Aaron Judge isn't using one, and he single-handedly beat the Brewers this weekend anyway. So I don't want to hear about the bats.
You're correct that Aaron Judge is not using one. The Brewers beat themselves. They did not lose to the Yankees. They lost to themselves. If you look at the amount of center cut fastballs they threw, you can actually, I love this new feature on StatCast this year. They're breaking down by team how many pitches they missed. The Brewers have twice as many as the team in second place right now. They just could not pitch this entire series. In terms of the legality of the bat, yes, loophole-wise, it is legal. The reason being, obviously, the rule that they're quoting when they use these bats, written over 100 years ago. It was written before 1920. It outdates the banning of the spitball in Major League Baseball. Its original intention was to keep players who at that point had other jobs to bring household items to try and hit a baseball with. I'm talking a pizza peel, a long broomstick, right?
All
that
right,
was the intention.
All right, Ken
no one
Burns,
is
we don't
swinging.
need the history of baseball. Thank you.
I think it's very important in the context of this discussion, right? Because no one's going to swing a 42-inch bat. Anyone who knows ball understands 42 inches is just out of the realm of possibilities, right? They were clearly, very, very obviously trying to outlaw the use of wacky items in a baseball game. When we talk about the advantage that the Yankees get, and I know all the jokes, and yes, they're all true. You have to spend millions of dollars and hire physicists from the best university in the world just to get Anthony Volpe to hit. Yes, all of that is correct. But the fact of the matter is, this is where I'll try to explain to the viewers out there why the Yankees gain a competitive advantage using these bats, right? So say he hits, say, one of the players, right? Jazz Chisholm, for instance, noted user of the torpedo barrel. To say he hits it 2 inches below the sweet spot of the bat, right? So for Jazz Chisholm's bat, it would be 25 inches for the sake of the story. Using a normal bat, the pitch would leave his bat with an exit velocity of 94 miles an hour. The WOBA of 92 mile an hour balls in play is 292, the weighted on base average, right? simple enough to figure out. About a 300 hitter at a 94-mile-an-hour exit velocity. However, using a torpedo bat, a ball hitting that same spot with the same swing leaves the bat with an exit velocity of 98 miles an hour. The WOBA of a 98 mile per hour exit velocity is 454. So at the end of the day, the legality of it doesn't really concern me. What concerns me is the practicality of it. And the practicality of it is non-existent, because what Major League Baseball would have to do to let the Yankees continue using these bats is let everyone continue using these bats.
And that's what they're going to do. There's already a couple of teams that are doing it.
Sure, fair enough. But you're going to have owners of teams that have less of a revenue stream. I'm looking at the Athletics, we can't use their city anymore, the Colorado Rockies, the Miami Marlins, these teams who don't want to spend money, looking at around $500,000 to have each player's bat remanufactured by the manufacturer, not to mention all the deals you'll have to do with Victus, Marucci, Louisville Slugger, B45. Those are just four of the top bat manufacturers in Major League Baseball right now. You're going to have to do deals with every single one of them to remanufacture all their bats. There's no chance billionaires are going to go for that. We see every offseason the decisions they make, right? There's no chance at the beginning of the season, after they just spent all that money getting ready for the season in spring training, that they're going to be like, oh, got to remanufacture all the bats now. And listen, if one owner's not going to do it, then they all can't do it.
Baseball's going to, I'll tell you why baseball's going to keep this in place, and it's a very simple reason, and we'll get to that coming up in just a moment. And we'll do it after a word from our friends over at Credit Associates. How about it? What a game last night. What a weekend it was for Aaron Judge. 4 home runs, a zillion RBIs. He's on pace for like 200 RBIs and a zillion home runs. It's fantastic. And he was certainly blocking the Milwaukee Brewers from getting a win this weekend. Maybe your credit card debt has been blocking your financial freedom. It's time to break through. Credit Associates can help you slam down that debt for up to half of what you owe. It's the kind of move you want to see in your financial game. Have $10,000 or more in credit card debt. Don't wait another minute. Don't wait another inning. Don't wait another pitch. Call 1-800-747-5362 and see how much you can save with Credit Associates. When it's time to make a play, they got your back, just like Aaron Judge. To see if you qualify for debt relief, call 1-800-747-5362 or visit creditassociates.com or just scan the QR code below. Here's the real simple reason, Sam Yarnell, that this isn't going to change. Why Major League Baseball isn't going to do a thing about it. They want more offense. Every rule change they've made over the last several years has been geared towards more offense because chicks dig the long ball. And I know you're going to say owners are cheap and they're not going to want to spend this kind of money. To keep up with the Joneses spending that kind of money, they're going to spend that kind of money. I'll also tell you this. And all of this kind of pools together with what's going on in baseball right now and a potential work stoppage, and that is this claim that, you know, teams aren't making money and all of this stuff. I saw somebody put out a great study this weekend about how much teams are spending, percentage of revenue.
Brooksgate was the company that did the analysis.
Yeah, the percentage of revenue being spent. These owners have the money, so they're not going to be able to cry about $500,000 to redo some baseball bats if it means being able to win baseball games. I think the torpedo bat is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. And by the way, I don't think every player is going to use it. You know, like I said, Aaron Judge certainly isn't going to use it. I am curious to see how quickly teams can get up to speed on this, though, because that's going to be part of the problem as well. The Yankees, and you know what? Don't blame the Yankees. Don't blame the Yankees for going and taking advantage if this is a loophole in the rule. I don't blame the Yankees for doing that.
I do, but just with real quick, with relation to the offense, right? The bats aren't what Major League Baseball is worried about. When they want more offense, they juice the balls, and the balls this year are supposedly juiced already.
Juicy! They certainly were in the Bronx this weekend. We're back. More Scott Seidenberg next. Welcome back to the show. Rejoined by Scott Seidenberg in this segment. Does a great job over on the weekends for VSiN. You can catch him from 7 p.m. Eastern till 11 p.m. Eastern, I believe, on Saturday and Sunday nights. Talking all things live betting, carrying you through games. Also the host of pregame.com, straight out of Vegas, AM edition. One of my favorite people to hang out with. I wish we had time to do it more often. So I got to ask you about live betting in general, because you're doing this show on Saturdays and Sundays. And I think it's the future of sports betting media is the live betting aspect of it, and doing shows that are sort of dedicated to it. But I was listening to you, and I said this in our second segment, in our first segment together, in the second segment of the show, where I said, I don't know how you do it. How you're watching everything at once and looking at lines, and lines are moving, and you're just, it's like a Beautiful Mind, Russell Crowe sort of stuff that's going on in your head when you're doing something like that. I mean, by the time you finish the show, 4 hours, your brain's got to be fried. What is the easiest sport to live bet, given those delays that we constantly see? And like me, I'm watching the game on MLB.TV. Sometimes it feels like it's almost a minute behind. Yeah. Like, what is there one sport that's easier than another?
So I don't want to say easier. You have more time in half times, certainly, of basketball, and half times of football, in between periods of hockey. You have more time. So the more time you have, the more time you have to handicap, right? And also the more time to see where the line's moving. A lot, and maybe in hockey, more so, I find it a little bit easier because the market's not as, I don't want to say not as sharp, but there's not as much money in the market as there is when you're looking at, NBA and college basketball going on right now. So for a basketball game, as soon as it hits the half, the line is posted, and then it almost changes immediately because there are bettors that are jumping in on that first number right away. Where in hockey, the line's not going to change much for the periods. And one of the things that I like to do in hockey is, if there's a game that I like the over on, and the over's listed at, 6 or 6.5, and we have either no goals scored in the first period or only one goal scored in the first period, yeah, sure, you might get an adjusted total of 4.5 for the game or 5.5 for the game, but I like taking the second period to go over 1.5 goals because I already like the over in the game. It was a low-scoring first period. Maybe I'm going to look at the shots on goal, and I'm going to see who's been dominating the play. But that's something I do take a look at. When you have more time to handicap and get all the data, that's when it becomes a little bit easier. It's a little bit more stressful if you're trying to do it in only a 2 or 3 minute span.
Can I ask you one more thing? And I'm not looking to create beef or friction between you and other people in the sports betting media space. But because you have like paid picks packages that you do and things like that, right? You still have those.
I have season-long subscriptions.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking online this weekend, and there's somebody who's very prominent in the sports betting space who likes to post on LinkedIn. I'll just say who it is. It's Brad Evans. And he put up a thing basically saying, I'll never charge for picks. I'll never put my picks behind a paywall, and almost taking a shot at people who do. How do you respond when there are people out there that say people shouldn't charge for their picks and calling for more transparency? And you strike me as the type that's transparent, so I don't question that at all. But people that charge for picks, and him basically saying, well, you shouldn't charge for your picks.
I mean, there's a lot of people that, and I'm not someone that sells like a daily pick or things like that. I said, I do season long stuff because I think there's value. In Major League Baseball last year, I had 700 plays, so, and I didn't talk about all 700 on my podcast, right. But maybe half of them I did. But I think that when it comes to selling plays, no one does it alone. Okay.
Sure.
No one does. No one that bets sports does it alone. No successful sports bettor. People get help everywhere. And if you find value in somebody else's opinion and somebody else's work, then go ahead and pay for that. It's the same thing as people who pay for a subscription to a website where they want to read an article. Frankly, every website you go to right now is essentially behind a paywall. I have to pay a monthly subscription just to read some of my favorite sports articles. And I see no issue with that. I have no problem with that. Do people have an issue with someone? Like if ESPN said, hey, you can't read Adam Schefter's NFL articles anymore unless you pay $1.99 a month. Guess what? A billion people, well, not a billion, you know what I'm saying? Millions of people are paying $1.99 a month. Yeah. So if you value the work, then there's no problem paying for it. I think it just comes, the sports gambling Twitter space or whatever you want to call it is very toxic. And people like to think, well, they're ways above anybody else. And I know Brad's a good guy, and okay, he's never going to charge for picks. But if a company said, hey, Brad, we're going to buy your new website that you have that you claim is for free and start charging people $1.99 a month and give you your percentage of it, guess what? Brad's signing that contract in a second. So, anybody is. Yeah, it's the nature of the business. Guess what? On my podcast, the reason why I don't charge money to listen to my podcast is because I got advertisers paying for it. But I work for VSiN, where you need a subscription to become a full VSiN member and see all the picks online and see all the articles that are written. Yeah, you get some stuff for free, but you got to pay to see the rest. Just like you got to pay to read The Athletic. Just like you got to pay to read, the New York Times and other articles and websites. So I just think that anybody that has an issue with it, that's an issue with themselves. And really just, that's fine. You do you. You do you.
Well said, Scott Seidenberg. I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that, so I appreciate you doing it. Scott Seidenberg, you can catch him on the weekend, 7 p.m. Eastern over on VSiN. Straight Out of Vegas AM edition, the podcast from pregame.com. Go and check that out as well. I always enjoy these conversations. Thank you, my friend.
Anytime.
We're coming back. Welcome back to the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, we'll wrap it up with some odds and ends. Some people chose violence in the NBA on Sunday. We'll talk about that. Alex Ovechkin gets a goal closer to the great one. And there are NFL owners meetings going on this week. We'll get into all of that coming up in odds and ends. But first, let's talk some NASCAR. Our Friday, Monday wraparound segment with Tino Pattigno, SiriusXM NASCAR Radio betting insider, our NASCAR insider on this show as well, hangs out with us. Denny Hamlin, your winner in Martinsville. I know you loved him from a betting standpoint, and you had a terrific weekend. For people that don't know, go and check out Tino on his X, formerly known as Twitter feed, and you'll see all the good stuff he predicted for this weekend's race. But Denny Hamlin comes out the winner. Talk to me about this race in Martinsville on the short track.
Well, Denny Hamlin was able to get the win here in Martinsville, and it was very Denny Hamlin-esque. Domination, strongest car at Martinsville, but maybe not on the car's standpoint, but because he was the one in control of it, right? We saw long green flag runs, saw cars and their tires wear throughout this race. And like I said on, before the show in the pre-race, where we were talking about everything that could happen this weekend in Martinsville, or last weekend rather, handling your car was the biggest one. The tire wear was another one. And it was which drivers can manage their stuff best for the long run. And that's who Denny Hamlin is. He gets the most out of his car every race weekend. And we saw this in Martinsville, and we've consistently seen this out of him. This is his 6th Martinsville win, but the first one since 10 years ago. It's been 10 years since he had won at this track, and he's led 915 laps now in the last 6 Martinsville races. Just showcases how good he is. It was a battle between him and Chase Elliott really for the win, although Chase did end up finishing in 4th. Those were the 2 best cars all day. But I like the racing action as a whole. This was typical for a spring Martinsville race, I would say. We had some strategy come into play as well, some comers and goers, but ultimately it was Denny Hamlin versus the world, as you would say, and Denny Hamlin got it done.
Yeah, he certainly did. And, we're getting into a rhythm, it feels like, with this season, where when you look at the top 10 in virtually every race, you're seeing the same names. It's just a question of where they finish. Even in races where guys don't necessarily have their best stuff, they're still managing to finish in that, top 10, top 12 sort of range. So where we are now through this point in the season, it feels like we kind of know week in, week out who's going to have a chance to win these races.
I agree with that. I think as we get closer to that 10 race mark, or the 10 races, throughout the season, that's where I look forward to sort of judge where we're at in the standings. But to your point now, everything's sort of shaping up, and we're seeing some drivers, Bubba Wallace, consistently racing inside the top 5. When he talked to us, right, he said he needs to be more in the mix. He needs to have a chance and a car that is capable of winning races, and he will capitalize on that. And it looks like they've given him just that, right? He's finally putting together, and him and that team, because it's a mixture of both, right? Sometimes the pit crew has trouble. Sometimes, the car fades away on on a long green flag run. Not anymore, and not this season for Bubba Wallace. He's stepped up truly as a leader on that team, and ultimately as a driver as a whole, being more in control of the day and putting together complete races, I think has been key for that 23 team. When you look at the standings right now, Jason, you have 4 Hendrick Motorsports cars inside the top 5, Christopher Bell in 4th, Denny Hamlin in 6th, 2 2311 cars in Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace in 8th right now in the standings, and then the 2 Team Penske drivers rounding out the top 10. It's the best of the best right now.
But it still does come down to winning races, unless you're Bubba Wallace and you could squeak in at the bottom of the standings because, the drivers that win races obviously are pretty much guaranteed a spot. If you're Bubba Wallace, if you don't win a race here, it's nice that you're racking up all these points, but you're still leaving a lot to chance without winning a race.
Yeah, to me, I feel like right now their mindset is control what we can control. Having a strong day, having a clean day. If that results in a 3rd place finish, 5th place finish, 8th place finish, fine. Because like you said, they've been getting stage points. They've been benefiting from that. 8th right now in the standings is strong. Now, like you said as well, you got to win races here. I think with where they're at in this point of the season, no need to panic because they would be the first driver, the best driver without a win. But if they continue to have these runs of a 3rd place, 5th place, 8th place, top 10 running, I believe that win will come.
We'll talk more about this in a moment here with Tino Pattigno, but first a word from our friends over at Credit Associates. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head trying to make monthly payments? Well, there's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high payments, and high interest rates that keep you in debt for decades, and you can do it with one affordable low monthly payment. Thanks to our friends at Credit Associates, their debt relief program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months. That'll save you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. Find out how much you can save. Call 1-800-747-5362, 1-800-747-5362, or just scan the QR code below. Kyle Busch. Before the season started, we kind of felt like, and early on in the season, it felt like Kyle Busch could still be a factor. And now it just seems like he's sort of an also-ran. In the final 40 seconds here, what's going on with Kyle Busch?
It's just the cars and with RCR that is the problem there, and Kyle Busch has been maximizing them throughout the early parts of the season. I think when you open up a season with the races that we have, we looked at Kyle Busch to win a race because everyone was starting off on a clean slate, and I think that helps Kyle Busch. Now, when the teams have started to progress, get in their groove, RCR just can't match that level of success and competitiveness of those other cars there. I think he'll have a shot to get better finishes, but it'll be tough to see where they could potentially get a win this season with the speed they're running at.
Fair enough. What's the big storyline real quick in 10 seconds for next weekend?
Throwback weekend, baby. It is NASCAR Throwback Weekend at Darlington. Going to be an awesome time. I love when they put that on that. Each and every year at that track, and it makes it really special to see all the faces there.
Tino Pattigno, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you on Friday, my friend.
Thank you.
Just about time to say goodbye on this Monday edition of the show. Tomorrow on the program, I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. The Yankees don't play, so we're not going to have to talk about torpedo bats. Maybe we'll just go through all my betting wins from the weekend, because I just crushed it on Sunday. Crushed it! Can't touch this, man. Woo! They might ban me from the sports books here. That's how bad I crushed it this weekend. Crushed it! But we don't brag. If you are interested, make sure to check out our podcast, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, you name it, we are on all of them. Bang, I got them all. I didn't even have to think about it today. Also, if you want to watch the show over on Spotify and YouTube, you can catch it there as well. Without any further delays, time for some odds and ends, presented by our friends at Edge Boost. I'm all about trying to help you make money when it comes to sports betting, and that's not just giving picks out. No. We're also telling you about other ways to make money with your sports betting, and that's where Edge Boost comes in. The financial platform that pays you cash back to wager, Edge Boost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit. With the Edge Boost Visa debit card, you're getting up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. Free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're doing already. It is a no-brainer. Plus, your Edge Boost debit card starts with a $250,000 daily limit, and it'll never be declined for gambling activity. They've got built-in tools to help you stay responsible, and there's absolutely no hidden fees or minimum required balances. So stop leaving money on the table. Visit edgeboost.bet to learn more. Sign up today. edgeboost.bet, or just scan that QR code. Use my promo code WRAP, W-R-A-P. Get a free account upgrade today with our friends at Edge Boost. Some people chose violence this weekend, Sam Yarnell, and that would include the Minnesota T-Wolves and the Detroit Pistons. Can't we all just get along? Apparently, in basketball circles, they cannot. And what a shock that Dante DiVincenzo was involved in something like this. One of the biggest fake wannabe tough guys in all of basketball, Dante DiVincenzo. Let's just say it. He kind of is.
All right.
So,
tell me you're a
there you
Knicks
go.
fan without telling me you're a Knicks fan. We got to fly through this. My quick reaction,
Yes.
because we got a lot to get to in this segment. My quick reaction, of course, Isaiah Stewart was ejected. That is all.
Shocking.
Next.
7 players, by the way, were ejected. It spilled into the fan area, which nobody wants to see, because every time we see stuff like that, we think malice at the palace. I don't know what they would have called it in this case if it had happened in Minnesota. Oh, here we go. Here it is. DiVincenzo. Oh, yeah. DiVincenzo. Yeah. I'm a tough guy. Yeah. There you go. Oh, it was great. I loved the kid in the front row with his phone, by the way, who's like, 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall at most, who's sitting there in the front row as all these players are just surging towards him, and he's got his phone in his hand. Just can't make it up. Great stuff. Odds and ends. We're closer to the end of the chase for Wayne Gretzky's goal-scoring record in the NHL, because Alex Ovechkin scored his 890th over the weekend, Sam Yarnell. Will he get there before the end of the year? We asked that question last Friday.
Yes, he will.
He's now yes. Yes is now. Last week on Friday, it was minus 115 for both the yes and the no. Now it's minus 170 yes, plus 130 no.
Yep. Yeah, he'll get there. Not really concerned, just a matter of who he does it against. Again, I said this last week when we were talking about it. I think it would be poetic if he did it in their last game of the season against Sid.
Could happen. Could happen. NFL owners meetings going on. Sam Yarn. Oh, look at him. And there is supposedly or reportedly a consensus to ban the tush push. Say it isn't so.
Yeah, Nick Sirianni with one of the most outlandish quotes that you will ever hear.
What did he say?
I shouldn't pin it on Nick Sirianni. It was someone in the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff, because I heard that it may have been an assistant that put this quote out there, but essentially stating that guys like Shane Steichen have their jobs just because of one play. Outlandish, just not at all correct, and quite frankly shows the inner lack of ball knowledge within that organization, and how Howie Roseman's genius is really the only thing that propelled them to the championship that they just won. But Jason Page, on the subject of NFL coaches,
Yes.
we got some breaking news on Monday that Frank Reich will be the interim for the Stanford Cardinal this season, bringing us the November 8th matchup in the ACC between Frank Reich's Stanford Cardinal and Bill Belichick's UNC Tar Heels. And let me tell you, I'm excited for that one.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Somebody has to be. NFL owners meetings, by the way, expect more talk about the 18-game season. The kickoff changes, all of that will be part of the conversation as well, as it relates to these owners meetings. And there's still Aaron Rodgers hanging out there.
Oh my gosh!
And it's no. Listen, I mean, look, the Steelers are said to still be. He's got to land. He's going to be in either Pittsburgh or Minnesota, I think, at this point.
So I heard rumors, we'll call them those, that over the weekend, Aaron Rodgers was throwing roots to DK Metcalf. Oh, wow. Sounds
Really?
like that deal's as good as done.
Sucker born every day. That includes Pittsburgh. The end of the Mike Tomlin regime as we know. Mike Tomlin regime as we know it. I almost called him Mike Timlin. I ever tell you I once played catch with Mike Timlin? Well, we'll have to tell that story another time. Thanks to Tino. Thanks to Scott. Thanks to you, Sam. We'll see you tomorrow.